This is the second of 3 10-minute deep dive vlogs on the big waves of sensory perception infographic. And after listening to part 1, have you made a distinction between neuroception we cannot feel and sensory perception that we can feel? So neuroception is in charge of keeping us safe, like the control tower at the airport, communicating behind the scenes for safety in the airspace. Neuroception precedes perception, right? Because the air traffic controllers only sound the alarm if danger calls for action. In this same way, neuroception works silently to shape our emotional state, and then our emotional state shapes our actions. So basically, our body creates the emotional state, and we might be called to take action. But what if the body is stuck in alert, stuck in feelings of danger? Because this is often true of infants who are extremely sensitive, but also children with atypical sensory sensitivities. And how about teens living in the usual emotional soup of growing up? And certainly anyone with the history of abuse, neglect, and social injustice. Getting stuck in the emotional state of sensing danger makes kids feel unsafe in their own skin. Emotional stuckness creates hyperactivity, which is overreaction to everyday life, or hypoactivity, which is underreaction. And adults even face this emotional stuckness when we are too busy. The deadlines never end, the responsibilities pile up, and relationships are not supported enough. So we try to ramp up our energy into hyperactivity, but we can only do that until we're too exhausted and our body forces us to slow down because we cannot cope emotionally and cannot keep going. So we shut down, we feel sick, we feel depressed, and we have to withdraw to recover. Our sympathetic nervous system is trying to save us from ourselves, from our unhealthy lifestyle. And with children and teens, the sympathetic nervous system activation looks like fidgeting. Some part of the body is always in motion. This child looks unsettled. Hyperreactive or hyporeactive to the usual everyday stresses. They show a sense of emotional disorganization and even stiff posture, poor physical coordination, and low energy. The solution for kids is to have adults move in, listen, observe, regulate this child or teen's emotions in the moment, but then also look for reasons for kids to be on high alert. What are the sensory issues? What are the emotional issues? Why is the body and mind agitated and unsettled? This is how kids' responses to stress are understood from the inside out, to change patterns of negative responses kids fall into, and support emotional development by relieving kids of emotional stuckness. But where does the capacity come from to move in and out of emotions, to identify emotions and regulate emotions? Well, 50 years of attachment research has shown that we develop capacities to put the brakes on big emotions within the circle of our closest relationships. So attachment provides an upward spiral, improving capacity for the body's natural emotional brakes. Our emotional brakes have dedicated nerve pathways identified by neurologists in their mapping of the vagus nerve network. The vagus has been called the compassion nerve, the vagabond nerve, the wandering nerve, but the vagus is much more than one nerve. It's a complex network of wiring with 80% of the sensory messages gathered from the body and sent toward the central nervous system, and only 20% sent the other direction from the brain to the body. Vagal anatomy gives the heart and face priority for social connection. So it's precisely that good attachment that keeps our vagal tone in tip-top shape. Vagal tone allows the vagus network to be flexible, changeable, so kids don't get emotionally stuck. The result is kids want to be in relationships. They respond well to connection and expect to feel safe inside relationships because their body feels grounded, relaxed, safe. Yes, the emotional waves are still high and low at times, but kids can depend on their vagus network to recover from big waves, to rest and relax again and again. Vagal tone is the emotional braking system to turn off feelings of danger. Children and teens with poor vagal tone tend to show difficulties with eye contact, facial expression, tone of voice. They miss social cues or misinterpret social cues as threatening. These are not reactions they are consciously choosing. In fact, the body's neuroception is setting the emotional state, and the emotional state is not tuned into social connection because their vagal tone is not tuned up. The face to heart connection is real. This is human anatomy. This is part of the central nervous system. Attachment, which goes wrong because children are living in chaos or they are schooled with intolerance, so their sensory and emotional experiences are disorganized. This explains why some children have poor emotion regulation and chronic behavior problems. Lack of emotional development requires more attachment. Otherwise, the long-term risk is a vicious cycle of disconnection, leading to more emotional dysregulation and more disconnection. And this is a long-term problem, since routine counseling attempts to teach skills when development is the key, but also medications, which are commonly used for behavior and mood disorders, generally dull all emotions, dulling emotional pain, but also pleasure. So what I'm saying is the big waves are not bad. They are real life, and the highs come with the lows. It's just that emotional wellness is a reciprocal relationship with attachment. In fact, social disconnection actually lights up the same brain circuits as a physical injury. Stuck emotions indicate an emotional injury, and the fix is more attachment to tone up the vagus nerve network. This is neurology of emotional development, and I do love this topic. So are you interested in knowing how to cope with the big waves of sensory perception? Because these are waves of emotions too. Our roadmap is the vagus network with 3 branches. One branch is the face-heart connection, activating attachment. The second branch is the heart-breath connection, supporting breathing cycles, heart rhythm, and has a kind of a bit part in responding to body temperature. The third branch is a brain-gut connection, sensitive to our safety, and will actually shut down digestion to deal with alarming feelings. So just to give you a bit more detail of these 3, the face-heart-vagus branch is entirely open to the influence of attachment relationships. So our presence as the caring adult is powerful in the life of a child or teen, especially if kids are struggling with their emotions and behavior. That second branch is the heart, breath, and body temperature vagus, and is partially under our control, right? We can sink into our heart space and feel our beating heart with practice, and use breath control to slow down the heart when it's racing by taking deeper breaths. And we can even increase our heart rate to increase our body temperature by jumping up and down. Or if we're too hot, we know to sit in the shade and slow our breath, and this relaxes the heart too. So we have the most control of the face-heart vagus, but also we have reasonably good control of the heart-breath vagus if we practice. But the third vagus branch is tricky because it taps into the lower brain where neuroception and interoception are lightning fast, constantly monitoring for danger around us and monitoring sensations inside the body, which are sensing anxiety or illness or something out of balance. This brain-gut vagal branch has direct two-way communication with the stomach and will shut down digestion when we are highly alarmed, but also slows down digestion when we are depressed or anxious over long periods of time. So there are 3 branches of the vagus network, and they dance in a rhythm with each other, so we don't get stuck emotionally. The face-heart vagus of attachment is always available to use to bump the brain-gut vagus out of a rut And the heart breath vagus is available as the go-between, if we know how to use it. The heart breath vagus is underused by children and teens who need it the most. Unless they have a compassion practice, reminding them the body is intelligently designed to keep them safe, keep them connected, and give them many ways to use their senses to regulate their emotions. Schools today use calming corners, group meditation, breath awareness, and guided body scans with students. So kids get to experience their ability to calm their body. But I just want to remind schools that self-regulation is not a worthy goal in itself, because emotions communicate to us. Emotion regulation has a social life. It's our social connections which grow us into a healthy emotional life. So emotional development is the goal, and it has a long timeline. So I love this topic of emotional development.